The Leafs made a big push to get to overtime, only to lose in the shootout to the San Jose Sharks. We'll talk about the missed opportunity for the Leafs in San Jose and whether it should be another concerning sign for this team here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your daily Maple Leafs-centric podcast hosted by myself, David Morassutti, and joining me today, once again, my good friend, Frank Stanisci. Today's episode of Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm sure maybe a few people put some bets on FanDuel on the Leafs against San Jose. And I think a couple of you were probably not too thrilled to see potentially a $5 bet not turn into a $200 bet because it was a shootout loss. It looked like it could have been an overtime loss, but it looked like it was going to be a loss in regulation for this Leafs team, losing 6-5 to San Jose. Frank, we kind of didn't push the idea of the Leafs potentially losing this game, but people could have already assumed that this game is a game this team could have lost.
Well, they had some foreshadowing, right? Previous experience, overtime shootout loss against this very same team. So, and this time they were playing at home, so they had that advantage. And it seems in sports, a lot of times, inexplicably, teams have other teams' numbers. And this year, San Jose has the Leaf number 2-for-2. Identical victories. You know, the Leafs come out with 2 points. They come out with 4. It's always predictable right now. We're kind of, for all of us that are watching the Maple Leafs, we're hoping that they can get out of this predictability where, trap games, they're victims of trap games over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Like for me, when I watched, especially that first period, this was a team that didn't have its legs. It didn't have San Jose was ready for the challenge. They pushed the pace. They were more aggressive, way more aggressive than the Leafs were. The Leafs were just they were chasing it for the whole first period.
Third game in 4 nights.
You're crossing. Right, cross travel there to a different time zone, right? It's not an easy. I get all that, but it's San Jose. This isn't the LA. If this was the LA Kings, totally can understand
it. They're coming.
Right? And when I look at this game, okay, the first goal that Tyler Toffoli scores. By the way, 26 goals on the year for Tyler Toffoli. What a season he's having there in San Jose. And he loves playing against the Leafs, I'll tell you that.
Always does.
That was just blown coverage after blown coverage. Defensive assignments weren't there. But don't worry, the Leafs got that goal back on the power play. They get the goal back, and what annoyed me the most is they get the goal back. Power play looks good, and that shorthanded goal that they allow. I understand when you have a 5-forward unit, those opportunities happen. But that's an avoidable goal. There's a lot of guilty parties in that one. Austin Matthews didn't exactly like his play at the line there. Marner was in a tough spot. Matthews didn't really do a good job coming back on the back check either. And Joseph Woll, I don't know if that's a goal I'd like to see him allow, right? Colin Graf isn't exactly a perennial goal scorer. You like to see him have that one, but Joseph Woll also faced 16 shots in the first period. So am I going to nitpick on that one? Well, you're going to kind of nitpick on that one. But again, I'm not placing the blame on Joseph Woll there. Second period, obviously, things kind of was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And we got to see Scott Lawton score. Like, okay, the guy's got a pulse. He's here. He's all right. And you can kind of see the excitement on the bench, right?
Right.
To see him score that goal. And for me, it's like I thought at that point when he scored that goal, this was gonna take the Leafs. Like, I believe this came not long after the Joseph Woll blunder, right? Where he shot the puck at the opposing player and it went back off of him and into the net. I thought, there you go. Okay, you got like get a little momentum there, and they score a goal, they allow a goal, they score a goal, they allow a goal. It was a little bit too much of that. I thought, okay, last goal of the third period, let's put it down. But then Tyler Toffoli scores again. He scores again. And it's just like I was almost like we were approaching 1 a.m. I was ready to go to bed. I'm like, okay, this game is fait accompli. Let's go to bed. I was playing soccer earlier, so I was tired from that. And 2 goals in the last minute. John Tavares and William Nylander to put it out to the shootout. And I didn't see it coming. No, I don't think anybody really saw that coming. It just as soon as Tavares got the one, you're like, okay, maybe. But Nylander, I felt good game for him. Kind of a tone for the way his line was playing. At least those guys, what they giveth, they taketh as well. They didn't exactly. They kind of evened themselves out at the end of the game there.
I personally, because that's all we do here is we give our personal opinions, and I'll say this: number one on my concern list, if you're Leaf management, your number one concern right now is in goal. Both goaltenders have allowed some poor goals and have played goal poorly. Have not been like they were at the beginning of the year, where they were stealing quite a few games. They were stealing periods, in fact, yesterday we saw, Wall steal the first period. The Leafs were in a good position, regardless of their poor play in that first period. They were outshot quite a bit, 15 something or other, whatever it was. Anyway, the problem that I have with the goaltending goes deeper than the goaltenders, David. That goal that he shot off the player coming in definitely was his fault. He shouldn't have done that. He should have made a better decision. Yeah. But he was left to make that decision because there was no defender, no help for him between that player and him. No player should get on the goaltender alone with nobody defensively insulating the goaltender. So what I'm going to say is this, as difficult as it is probably for me to say and maybe for people to understand, the goaltending is the defenseman's fault, in my opinion. In that instance, there's no way a player should be alone in on the goaltender, like a breakaway, like anything like that, right? This was like a breakaway. And the goaltender was forced to go out of his crease a little bit, get out of his comfort zone, and make a play that obviously is not behind the net, which is what goaltenders practice. This is what they do. They're behind it. How often, David, does a goaltender play the puck in front of the crease? Right? So he's in strange territory. Why is he in strange territory? Because his defender put him there. He was put there by the Leaf defense or forward, whoever you want to blame for that. So this is a concern for me because they almost have to go back to almost training camp rules. In other words, they're not performing the basics very well, and that's concerning for me. And proof of it is this: when they need to, that game was a perfect example of what's wrong and what's right with the Leafs. What's wrong with the Leafs is they don't play up to their standard; they play up to the opposition's standard too often. Proof: the last minute of that game, they tied the game. They scored 2 goals at the. So we know they have the will. We know they have the will because they had it then. But where was it for the other 59 minutes?
Yeah.
And then overtime.
No, exactly. And there was a lot of that going on. Let's take a break here. We'll go into a few things that maybe we didn't like from the game, and what positives can we take from the game, because they did get a point out of it, and there were some I think some good things to come out of it. So we'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the net. You can also use it on the rest of the Leafs weekend. Do you want to capitalize on William Nylander's great streak going on right now? One of the hottest players in the NHL right now. Might be worth getting in on the action on him, as they at least have 2 more games this weekend. You can do that all on FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues here. David Morassutti with Frank Stanisci filling in for Mike DiStefano, who is away on vacation. And as we do with every single Leafs loss, we do the good, bad, and the ugly. We talked a lot of negative about this game. Frank, what's something that you liked from this Leafs
I liked about was the urgency to score those 2 goals.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, that's the most important thing to like out of that game. Unfortunately, in a game that they lose 6-5, you can't talk about great defensive play. So what we're left with is discussing how they are, when urgent, they can score. They have the talent to overwhelm other teams. They have a luxury that a lot of other teams don't have. I don't know of a team that has 4 players like the Leafs have. As much as we always talk about how much they cut into the salary, what we're seeing, at least for 3 of the 4, except for Matthews, the king of the 4, they're playing well, and that's what you need, and they're doing that. And unfortunately, McMahon has been better. I know you want to talk positive, but I'll just say that McMahon needs to play better as well. He was not as good as he normally is defensively, getting control of the puck. I just wanted to get that out of the way, because we expect more from him, especially after the conversation you and I had about him the last show.
Yeah, so I think to add on to the positive part from that is it was a point that you stole. It was a point stolen for the Leafs, and that was what they didn't do against Nashville. You may not have your best game against Nashville, but they lost points on that in that game against Nashville. This one, you at least got 1, but guess what? You really would have liked to have had 2 for a couple of reasons. One, the Utah Hockey Club got their butts whooped by Tampa 8-0. We'll discuss a little bit more about the ramifications of this with the Atlantic Division, but just want to bring that up. So getting that point was important because you kept maintaining some slight advantage in the Atlantic Division with that. So I'll give them this. People are probably like, they didn't deserve to win, but guess what? In this stage of the season, you take the points when they're available to you. And Leafs at least got that point, 2 goals to end the game there. My good from it, and it kind of coincides with it, the play with the man advantage. If their power play wasn't playing at the level that it was in that game, the Leafs would have had no chance in that game. Okay, it's crazy that not long ago we were talking about this power play being absolutely dreadful, right? Are they going to be able to rely on it in the playoffs? 2 power play goals, so 2 for 4 on the power play on the night, and technically 2 goals on the power play, but we also had the goals with the man advantage, or the extra man. I kind of put those in line together. So that counted for 4 of your goals. 4 out of the 5 goals came when you had an extra man on the ice. If this is what we're seeing from this unit, the extra man unit, I feel a lot more comfortable going into the playoffs knowing that they're playing at this level. Now, need to continue to see it. I want to see it though against a higher echelon team, a team that's maybe a little bit better with the penalty kill. You know, Florida is a really good example of that. Can at least really take care of a team that's got a really good penalty kill percentage. And like the LA Kings, they're going to play next this weekend. 81.4%. They're the 8th ranked power penalty kill. Let's see how they do against that, right? Because I think that's where you're going to get a real sense of where this power play is. Because it was it was like in the 20s for the long part of the season. Now they're up to 5th overall. 5th overall. That's how much this power play has really come together. What I liked about it too is the areas that they attacked. They weren't just perimeter play. They were going for the net, getting those rebounds, getting those extra, getting into those scoring areas. So doing a lot better of that. So I'll give the power play a good. Frank, what was bad? Not necessarily ugly, but what was bad from the game?
Bad was the defense. For me, as a team, the defense was not. This team cannot allow a Sharks team that can't score 6 goals. It's just that's the really bad part. Is that defensively the Leafs are not playing well enough to be the kind of team they need to be, and it's important that they get points now, because the first thing they got to do is secure a playoff position. Once they secure a playoff position, the bad part is they're not giving management and coaching staff enough opportunity to, long before the season ends, in other words, with an installation of a few games, resting players, that kind of thing. Because, that kind of stuff is important at this time of the year, making sure that players who have nagging injuries are having a chance to 100% get better before the last few games, because I don't believe in sitting guys the last few games, because you want to go into the playoffs playing the way you need to play. And so for me, that's the bad. The bad is they're not giving themselves a chance to secure a playoff spot. In that process, in securing a playoff spot, secure themselves the best position they can get. It really doesn't matter to me who they play, David, but it's about goals, and it's about meeting those goals and developing confidence. And that's what I said about the goaltenders. The defense has to help the goaltenders get their confidence back, because they don't look like they're playing confidently. That's the bad.
Yeah, my bad. I'll see. I was debating between bad or ugly for Joseph Woll. There were a couple goals he needed to be better on. I understand the one that he was trying to find an outlet. Freeze it. Don't try to play it. If you don't have an outlet, hold it. You can do that. And that was to me, Joseph Woll was a bit under siege in this game, but I think you also just need to recognize where you don't have to do everything. So he should have needed a better decision making in that position there. So I do think that if I was Leafs, that's a game I would have liked to have seen Joseph Woll play a bit better, show that he can. Now he's done it, and he's done it. I looked at the game against the Avalanche. He did have his best, heroic effort, but the last two, Nashville and San Jose, it hasn't been there for him. Right now, the Leafs team has not been playing very well defensively in front of him, so I'm not going to put it all on him, and that's why I'm going to add this for my ugly. But yeah, I need to see a little bit better from Joseph Woll. But Frank, what did you find ugly from the game? Maybe you and I have
contrast. The contrast of the Leaf team. What was ugly is watching how good they can be and watching how bad they can be, and seeing them all in the span of 3 periods. That it was really it was so inconsistent. It was terrible, and it was the whole team. There were the ugly part for me, unfortunately, is that second line that looked so good recently, right? And then all of a sudden, just things didn't work out for them. It's almost to suggest that if they don't dominate by scoring on the other team, defensively they can't handle them. I said earlier, McMahon was a -2. That's not good. But again, there were 6 goals scored, so there's a lot of minuses out there. His isn't alone.
Yeah, his is not alone. I felt like to me there was a lot. Yeah, too many minus players. There were guys who, had good performances offensively. Defensively, though, there was a lot of players who were guilty in this game. Oliver Ekman-Larsson was one. Simon Benoit was another. John Tavares, that second line should have been a lot better defensively. Even Marner and Matthews to start the game, they were outplayed. But I'm going to give a little special shout out to a player on the opposite team, Timothy Liljegren, or Liljegren now, changes all the time. Against his former team, had a great night. He was on for 2 goals he had 2 assists in the game. It was a positive player defensively for the Sharks. That was almost like, I wasn't good enough for you defensively. And you know what? I understand the Leafs, why they decided to cut bait. They want a player with more consistency, could play to that playoff style a bit more, but he looked like a player that was ready for that challenge. So the ugly for me is that you had defensemen that were, or players that were not bringing it defensively, and and you had Timothy Liljegren say, "Well, I can do it too," and I just showed you how I can do it. But what I'd like to see a little bit more when you were in Toronto, Timothy, not now when you're on your on your next journey. But he looks like he's fitting in quite well with San Jose. I'll give him that.
Absolutely. And the next thing that we've got to look forward to are the next 2 games in California. They can still come back. The team can still come back with a decent record. I mean, coming back 2-3, that wouldn't be a bad thing with one of the 2 wins and a tie coming back. This whole moment that we're having right here, talking negatively about the team and talking about their defensive struggles, they can change all that in the next couple of games, and that's what they need to do. That's what they need to forget, flush the last game. And, well, you know what? Can I repeat something Tavares said last week? They need to be pissed off at the way they played.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to play like they're pissed off.
They do. And they're going to get another chance to do that here with the California road trip continuing. And just a few thoughts on how this team has performed lately. And if maybe we're getting a little too much. There might be a little bit too much negativity about how they played against teams like this. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On These podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Daily savings time snuck up on us again. And if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Energy has your back. Or guess what? If you're one of those people that tried to stay up to watch that Leafs game against San Jose, you might have used 5 Hour Energy. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, watching the Leafs in California, as I just said, or you're trying to get up early and go for a workout, or you're just trying to keep you busy, help you with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. The best thing about 5 Hour Energy is the on-the-go convenience. Whether you're at a game or you're traveling, 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab, and it keeps you feeling refreshed, and it gives you just that little extra time to make sure you get that boost for all your activities. So head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blues raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized with 5 Hour Energy. Yeah, Frank, I was one of those people that you needed a 5 Hour Energy because I debated maybe doing a quick podcast after the game, but it was 1:20. About 1:20 when that game ended, Eastern time, like, no, not happening. I'm going to bed. There's nothing I can say at that time of night that's going to give you guys enough and I pushed a little later because we had I had a few things I had to do today. So sorry if this is out a little later for those who are waiting for a podcast, but we are making sure that we don't take away your enjoyment of the content. Make sure you're getting the content that you need for this team. And hopefully maybe you can have a 5-hour energy to make sure you are listening to us at this point in the show. But the Leafs now, again, it's one of those things where you take the lessons from the game. I don't even say flush this game because there are lessons you need to learn from this game. But guess what? You've got 2 more on this road trip to finish this off. You can start off with the LA Kings, who this is a team I've always had a tough time figuring out. Like, they have been stuck in kind of that they're a playoff team, but are they a Stanley Cup playoff team, right? And, they've had some good stretches. They just came off a 4-0 shutout loss to the Colorado Avalanche. But before that, they had rallied off 4 straight wins. They dusted the Hurricanes 7-2, the Bruins 7-2. They beat the Rangers, which I don't know if I would consider that an impressive feat, but I feel like this is a perfect test for the Leafs in more ways than one, because this Kings team is built for the playoffs right now. I give them a lot of credit for what they've been able to do.
Like San Jose, the Leafs out-hit them like 15-2 or something like that. They out-hit them. This team, they're not going to out-hit, and this team likes to put pressure on the defense. So we're going to see how the breakout for the Maple Leafs is, and are they going to get trapped in their own zone, because that's what LA is going to do to them. The Leafs are going to have their exit passes on cue, and they're going to have to be very good and very quick. And again, we've got to see, Matthews has got to break out. He needs a hat trick. Not for me, not for you, not for the fans, but for himself. He needs to have a big game. He hasn't had one in too long. I know he had a 2-goal game over a week ago. That's great and everything, but we need more of that from him. He's a guy that scored 69 goals, for goodness sake.
Yeah, if you want a really good idea of maybe where Matthews has struggled to get the goals, go look at Mike Kelly. He put out a really good video Thursday. He was on what's it called? Amazon Prime's
broadcast. Yeah, the Monday
broadcast they do on Thursdays. And he was kind of talking about how Matthews has really seen a dip in the number of goals that he is scoring, the mid-range goals. So kind of, between the face-off dots, right? He had, to this point last year, I think he had like over 20 goals in that mid-range. There's 5. His shot is also and
to his wrists and
And so we're trying to figure, okay, so what exactly is leading to it? So they looked at the average speed of his shot. 77 miles per hour last year, 67 right now. A 10 mile per hour difference. That is different. Big difference. Goalies not able to react. Goalies are able to react a little bit quicker now because the shot's not as fast. So I think right now, this is one of those things where Austin Matthews has definitely got to figure it out, because they need Austin Matthews to score in the playoffs. Now, is it fatigue? I don't think it's fatigue. I think there's an injury there that is certainly hampering his ability to be that productive. The question is, can they figure it out in time? Because they need Austin Matthews to be their best player. He is their best player. He has to be their best player. But if he's not healthy, that impacts that. So, the LA Kings, it's going to be a big challenge. I'm very curious to see how he handles it. And the LA Kings have a lot of players right now that are really stepped up in this last stretch. They going into that game against Colorado, they had won 9 of the last 10 games. And 2 players have really stuck out to me. I know some people have seen, like Quentin Byfield, a player that some people had on the trading block potentially they were going to move on from and try to get a more consistent producer. Over his last 22 games, 21 points. Kevin Fiala as well as 12 goals and 21 points over the last 22. So they have really stepped up offensively in this stretch here. And, with the way that the Oilers are playing right now, like if you're LA, you're putting yourself in a position to earn at least. I mean, it looks like it's going to be LA and Edmonton in that first round matchup. Try to get that home ice at this rate. I mean, they've played each other so many times in the playoffs. We'll see if they can take every advantage they can get. But if I'm the Leafs, this is the exact type of team I want to play. And some are saying, "Oh, you want to get the easy matchups?" No, you want this Leafs team to go up against one of those topper echelon team to show what they can do.
Absolutely, and they have to do that. And while they're in the West Division, they're in territory that's going to be a real, oh my goodness, it's going to be tough. The western side of the playoffs is going to be amazing. As much as
it's going to be a slugfest.
It's amazing how we're talking about Florida and Tampa, but the three teams that the Leafs are in the pack with in the Atlantic Division, they're mid-range playoff teams. They're 8th or 9th and 10th. That's what they're fighting for right now. Who's going to be 8th? Who's going to be 9th? Who's going to be 10th? What you got in the Western Division is a lot of tough teams. But this is what makes the way the Leafs are playing and getting into the playoffs so important, because if they can make it to represent the East, by the time the East is ready to play the West, I firmly believe the team that survives the Western Division is going to be prone to losing. This is another one of those opportunities we'll be talking about in hindsight, saying, well, if only the Leafs had done this. So they've got to play these games like you're talking about. They got to beat teams like LA. They've got to prove they can play those teams and play them well. But the other thing is they've got to play well when they don't have to. And that's the issue here, is that you can't give any teams an opening. You have to have an ironclad defense. And that's what they can do with LA. And that's what they got to learn to do with teams like San Jose. It's just what they have to do. This is the process they've got to find a way to succeed in. Playing really well and getting in a good spot in the playoffs in their minds, between their ears. David, I don't care who they play. I don't think it matters who they play. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter who they play, because at the end of the day, it's how they play, not who they play.
Yeah, exactly. And, people were bringing up the idea of the missed points, missed opportunities. The Leafs aren't as guilty of this as their two teams that are in this Atlantic Division battle with. The Leafs, I'll give credit to who was the one that did this? I don't know if this is his on Reddit. Yeah, it was on Reddit. Bumchoda. He put this out that the Leafs have played, obviously, San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Philly, and Buffalo. Those are the 5 worst teams in the NHL right now. In those 11 games that they have played against those 5 teams, the Leafs have earned 18 potential points in those games. They've only missed out on 4 points, a maximum of 4 points in that against those teams. Against the same teams, now I think Tampa's played fewer games against those teams than the Leafs have, but Florida has played more. Both Tampa and Florida have missed 6 points against those teams. So the Leafs have actually earned more points relative to what they have played than Tampa and Florida have. So it's not just the Leafs thing. The only thing I can say in retort to that is, well, imagine if the Leafs had gotten the maximum points, considering Florida and Tampa have struggled against them.
The ones that are sitting there, the ones that you're ahead by 2 goals at the end of the second period or the middle of the second period, and you end up losing the game. Those points, having the lead and giving it away, is what you cannot do. That's part of the process of playing in the playoffs. You got to be able to lock her down. Locked down is a good phrase in hockey.
Yeah, they definitely. So right now, as we said earlier, the Leafs have a 1-point lead on both Florida and Tampa. Obviously, Florida has 1 game in hand. They are back on the ice, Florida against Utah, who are just coming off an 8-0 loss to Tampa. So I think you can understand where that one might be going, considering. But the Leafs right now, they got to take the maximum amount of points right now that they can, just because guess what? When the Leafs finish a California road trip, Florida will be waiting. It'll be Florida next on the bill. So
2 games against Florida.
Yeah, 2 more games, massive games, huge games.
Play against them,
right?
And
if
anybody remembers, this is an opportunity for the Leafs. If you remember a few years ago, last year actually, now that I think about it, Florida won the Stanley Cup. If you remember, they were struggling. They were struggling to make the playoffs, and then they played the Leafs, and they had a game. They had a game that really set the table for them. It was a table-setting game in a defeat of Toronto that had a lead, and they should have won the game. And they built on that. The Leafs are going to need to start playing games that build on going into the playoffs. They need some, people call them, the games where the statement games that they can win. Well, I look at it not just as a statement game, but a building game, a game that builds, that they prove they're built to themselves, or building the confidence that they're doing what they need to do to get ready for the playoffs. Last night was not one of them. That was not one of them. The game against Colorado was, that's where the Leafs are. They're going to have to start building on their ability to win in the playoffs.
Yeah,
in their minds.
So we'll see how that goes. On the next episode, we'll break down the 2 games against Anaheim and LA, see how they went, and where the Leafs kind of fall. How did they respond after this loss to the San Jose Sharks? So make sure you go and subscribe to Locked On Leafs podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. Make sure you follow myself on X at @D_Morassutti, and you can follow Frank on X as well at Candid Frank. And you can also follow Frank's stuff on YouTube. Just search Candid Frank Live, and you'll find all of his stuff on there. So thank you, Frank, for joining us. And make sure that you come back and join us here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.
Ciao.